Hey, hey, y'all. I hope that everyone is having an incredible day today. And if not, remember to choose to. I want to start out as normal, thanking all of my new listeners. I want to shout out a few cities that I'm learning about as they're learning about me. Shout out to Flagami, Florida, Bogalusa, Louisiana, Brandon, Mississippi, Matthews, North Carolina, and Katy, Texas. I see y'all. To all my listeners inside and outside of the US. Thank you for tuning in. As usual, I am grateful. Y'all, we have a special guest with us today. Now, look, if creating the table was a person, I am excited to be sharing space today with this phenomenal woman. She is an award-winning CEO and executive producer of Plus One Society, an event production and marketing agency specializing in social justice and racial equity. Please welcome our guest today, Kristen Ingram. Hey, Kristen.
Hey, hey.
Hey, you look gorgeous today. And we kind of had some pre-chit chat, but I am admiring the wall behind you.
Oh, thank you. That's my life's journey wall.
I love it. I love it. Well, speaking of your life's journey, you guys, I told Kristen that I would be on my best behavior, but I've done that with previous guests, and you know how that has worked. But I'm going to stick to it today, y'all. As we had mentioned, award-winning CEO and executive producer, advocate and activist in social justice and racial equity. How did you arrive here, and what brought you to do this work?
You want the long or the short of that?
Oh, girl, whatever you got time for. We're here for it all, either version.
Well, an arrival is, I think, too definitive of a word. Like, I'm here right now, but I'm on a journey. So if we talk again in a year, I'll be in a different place,
Yes.
So where I'm at the moment, it's just been affected by every day I've had up until this day. And so what that looks like professionally is, starting in the sports marketing department at UNLV, and then going to study under and learn from my mentor, Rick Ford, and then going to ESPN, and then being recruited by the NFL, and then having this awakening while at the NFL that I could use my skill set for something more than commercial consumerism, and that was around the time where, Colin Kaepernick was doing his unintentional protest, but protest nonetheless. And just, I think that part really spoke to me because I identified with him so much.
Yeah.
And, you start to ask yourself, like, what can you do? He's putting his whole career on the line. What am I doing? Yes. I'm like volunteering on the weekends. Like, it's not enough, And so I just really, and really it's a divine hearing. I ask the question, and when you ask a question, an answer will come, whether it's the one you want or not, doesn't really matter. And so I got an answer, and it was to use, this skill set I have in, event production and marketing and branding to serve my community in a larger capacity. And then that's how Plus One came to be manifested. And, that was almost 5 years ago now. And so we've just been doing the work, and I get to say that my protest is my work now. It doesn't have to be something separate.
I think that is so important. Listen, look, everything you said just spoke to my spirit so much so that it put a tear in the corner of my eye. And that is because I think that it's so important for people to understand. I am a softie, but I just also appreciate everyone's emotional, their journey that it took to get them to where they are, and the awareness that they had along the way, or maybe the faith that they had to know that the next step that they were taking was the right step, right? It may not be what they saw for themselves, but it's what they felt called to do, right? And so I think that so many times people people wonder if what they're doing is enough. People wonder if they have the ability to serve on a different level just based on the skills that they have, right? And so I think it's so important in moving to here that, you know, through what you were doing already, right? Like you
Right.
saw it in yourself to take that to a higher level, and being inspired by, you know, what you were seeing happening around you. Um, you know, you were able to take your skills and your craft and create something larger, and that was activism for you, right? Like I always tell people,
Absolutely.
there's different ways to be an activist, and it looks different for everyone. Sometimes teachers, they're in the classroom being that, right?
Yeah.
And through our profession, we're able to be that in different ways.
That's so important what you just said there, because that's the idea, right? An activist isn't any one way or one type of person, and we need us in every space.
Yes.
And so to be an activist does not mean you have to be in the streets.
Yes.
Literally,
Yes.
you know, right? Like being in a boardroom is just as effective. You know, I remember talking to my mom one day, and I was like, oh, I was like, I should have been an activist. I was like, ooh, if I was in the 70s, you know what I mean? Like I would have killed this activist game.
Right.
I'd have been Black Panthered up. You know what I mean? Like, couldn't tell me not me and Angela, you know, all together. And she said something that was so profound. She was like, what makes you think you aren't? I was like, what does that mean exactly? You know what I mean? And so I never considered myself this kind of advocate and activist labeling has been put on me. And it's something I've really, like, my core, I'm that all day, but I never, because I thought it had to look away, that I was like, no way, that's them. And I'm just here to root them on, you know, and trying to do my little part. But it's true. I've had this realization that, no, I am an activist. And like, I've been one probably my whole life, you know, and it just is I do it a different way. Because I can tell you, you know, I have to run down the sheet, but the number of policies that we've been able to reform in the state of California, in Wisconsin, in Ohio, coming up, New York, I haven't been in a street to do one of them. I've been producing to do all of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know what? I feel like this generation is a whole new something, and they are wonderful teachers. But it also makes me think about, like, you know, the stories that we heard of, you know, and growing up, of, you know, people who were out there who we thought of them as these, you know, on the front line activists, but they were just showing up at school. They were just showing up at work, right? Like they wouldn't have considered themselves that either, right? But them just being there made them an activist. Them deciding that they weren't going to bow down, or that they weren't going to not get their education, or I'm going to eat here. I'm going to, you know, that was, you know, I talk about just, you know, resistance and what that looks like and what that means, and that it doesn't have to be this over the top. I mean, it can be when it needs to be, but that it doesn't have to be this over the top, loud, you know, scream, but it can also be a quiet presence, right? And just deciding to show up and be exactly who you are in these spaces is sometimes also that. And I think this generation is doing a good job at paving the way for that also.
Absolutely. And I'll share something that I keep with me that Angela Davis did tell me that was really prophetic, is that you serve the movement from where you are with what you have. And so that to me means you show up with what you have. So, and the example she gave from, you know, back in the day was, she was like, there was a guy who made really great sandwiches. And so he made sandwiches for all of our marches. And that's what he did. And it was so important. You know what I mean? And I was like, I make good sandwiches, you know, like, but like, literally, like, it's whatever you have. And people, you know, and I don't want to get into a social media spiral, but you know
Yes.
what I mean? We're not intended to be the same. We're not endowed with the same gifts for a very specific
Yes.
reason.
Yes.
And so you do yourself and your calling and your purpose a disservice when you're trying to be like anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And it took me, a long time, to find myself, right? Because I was looking externally through like,
Yeah.
how am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to think? How am I supposed to dress? And all these things. And it's so distracting, you know?
Distracting is a perfect word.
Yeah. And so that's the thing I love about the generation now is they are finding out who they are much sooner than
Yes.
we have. And
Yes.
it's making all the difference,
Yeah. And I think this generation has also done, not even done, that minimizes, but also done an incredible job of showing the range of Blackness, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think, speaking specifically of Black young people, right? I think that for so long, Blackness was put in this box. This is what it is. This is what it is to act Black. This is what it is to look Black, to be Black,
child,
right? Like,
child,
right?
preach that thing.
Right?
I don't preach that.
Right?
Come
Right?
on. Yeah.
Right? Like it wasn't cool to be smart. It wasn't cool to, flex those grades. It wasn't cool, right? Like we would dumb it down, Ooh, we dumb it down, right? To feel accepted. And I'm like, raise free kids. Raise free kids to know exactly who they are, to be what they are, to show up in spaces and feel comfortable with being who they are, even if it's different than someone that looks just like them, right? Like, that is the beauty of Blackness, is the range of it, right? From our personalities to our hair, to our complexion, to our shape, to our, right? Like, to our our uniqueness, right? As a culture and as individuals, right? Like, and I feel like this generation, not only in politics, not only in, policy molding and shaping and contributing to that, not only to, workplace environments and mental health, care and self-care and promoting those types of things, but it's also about being okay with the Blackness that you are, right? Like, this is me,
Janelle,
right?
Janelle, that is it. That is
Right?
it, honey. That is all of it.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes. Yes and amen. Yes.
right?